Centuries ago, humanity ruled the solar system. On every world where the sun shone, humans had left their mark. Cities stretched across planets, colonies thrived on moons, and massive space stations orbited every major planet. It seemed as if nothing could stop them. Yet, despite all this power, humans carried a seed of their own destruction. It began slowly. First, it was small arguments between worlds. The Terran Union, ruling from Earth, claimed authority over the periphery. Mars, proud and independent, wanted its own industries free from Earth's control. Trade disputes turned into cold wars, whispers into harsh accusations. Every asteroid, every station, and every transport route became a battlefield of politics and pride. The people of Earth and Mars forgot a lesson that their ancestors had learned long ago. Unity makes strength, but division invites ruin. As resources were plentiful, they should have focused on progress, on reaching farther into the stars. But instead, they drew lines, pointed fingers, and let greed rule their decisions. Skirmishes began quietly. Small raids on supply ships, sabotage at factories, and secret attacks on colonies. At first, these incidents were minor. Few noticed. But every action built tension like a storm gathering in the distance. And then, the spark that ignited the fire appeared. A passenger ship traveling from Titan to Earth was destroyed. Thousands were lost. Terran leaders blamed the Martians. Martians blamed terrorists. But in the end, the blame no longer mattered. War had begun. The war was unlike anything humanity had faced before. Entire fleets clashed in orbit around planets, massive space stations were reduced to rubble, and colonies on moons became battlefields. The sky, once a symbol of hope and adventure, was now filled with smoke and fire. Human civilization, built over centuries, began to crumble. Factories that once produced spacecraft and supplies lay abandoned. Trade routes, the veins that carried life between worlds, were empty. Cities that had been bright with life became silent monuments to hubris. Even on Mars, where innovation had once flourished, people scavenged for old machinery and spare parts to survive. The solar system, once buzzing with human activity, became a graveyard of ambition. Yet, amid this destruction, humans continued to survive. Small pockets of people hid in underground bunkers, remote moons, and asteroid colonies. They repaired old ships, hunted for food, and scavenged old factories. Life was hard. Every day was a struggle. But humans are stubborn. They refused to disappear. Stories of the past kept them going. Tales of the first rockets breaking the chains of Earth's gravity. Memories of the first humans walking on the moon, the first bases on Mars. Humans remembered the glory of their species, and even in the darkest times, that memory lit a spark of hope. Some colonies were more fortunate than others. On Callisto, humans learned to farm in caves, using sunlight collected from orbiting mirrors. On Titan, scientists worked in secrecy to repair old energy generators. Even on Mercury, where solar storms raged, humans built shields and maintained small settlements. Every corner of the solar system had survivors, and each survivor carried the weight of a civilization nearly lost. But survival was not enough. Every day humans faced new threats. Raiders, hungry for supplies, attacked ships. Rival factions fought over control of abandoned stations. The cold vacuum of space itself was a deadly enemy, punishing mistakes with death. And yet, humans adapted. They used ingenuity and cleverness, turning old warships into cargo haulers, old factories into safe havens, and broken engines into functioning spacecraft. Through this struggle, the first hints of a new idea began to take shape. Humanity had fallen, yes, but they had not been broken. They had learned from their mistakes. From the ashes of greed, envy, and war, a new generation of humans was beginning to understand what had been lost, and what must be rebuilt. The solar system was quiet now, almost eerily so. No laughter, no chatter on communication channels, no busy hum of spaceports. Only the occasional flicker of old satellites and the faint trails of small human ships. Yet even in this silence, the promise of return lingered. Humanity had survived the darkest winter. They had endured centuries of hardship. And somewhere in the shadows of abandoned colonies, in hidden factories and forgotten bases, humans whispered to one another, "We will rise again." The universe seemed indifferent, vast, and cold. Yet for humanity, the fire of ambition still burned. The fall of civilization had shown them what they had lost. The ruins of cities, the debris of old warships, and the silence of once busy colonies reminded them of a truth. Progress is fragile, but the human spirit is not. From the darkness of despair, a new hope began to grow. It was small, like a flickering flame, but it was enough. Enough for humans to start dreaming again. enough for them to begin rebuilding step by step. The story of humanity's rise had not ended. It had only begun a new chapter, a chapter of survival, resilience, and the undying desire to reach the stars once more. And somewhere in the cold, silent reaches of the solar system, humans prepared. For one day they would take back the skies, reclaim the planets, and shine brighter than ever before. The sun, still burning in the distance, would witness their rise. Humanity would rise again. The solar system was quiet but not empty. Humans still survived in small, scattered pockets, hiding from the chaos of a civilization that had nearly destroyed itself. On the moons of Jupiter, in hidden asteroid colonies, and beneath the surface of Mars, humanity clung to life. They lived in darkness, using old tunnels, caves, and abandoned stations. Life was harsh. Every day was a battle against hunger, cold, and danger. On Callisto, a colony of survivors worked in near silence. The humans there had learned to farm in caves, using sunlight mirrors to grow food in small plots. Machines, long broken, were repaired with ingenuity and patience. Every bolt and wire mattered. Every human alive was precious. A young technician looked out over the cavern, watching the faint glow of their underground lamps. "If we can survive here," he whispered to himself, "we can survive anywhere." On Titan, scientists struggled to repair old energy generators. The frozen winds outside made even stepping out a dangerous task. Supplies were low and resources were scarce. Yet the scientists persevered. They rebuilt circuits from scraps and tested engines long thought useless. Slowly, tiny sparks of hope flickered to life in the darkness. Even on Mercury, where solar storms could fry an unprotected ship in seconds, small teams had survived. They built shields from old station parts, reinforced habitats, and repaired communications equipment. Life was risky, every moment a challenge. Yet humans never gave up. They adapted. They improvised. They endured. But survival alone was not enough. The survivors knew that if humanity stayed scattered and weak, the next disaster, natural or man-made, could finish what the wars had started. Arguments between colonies over resources flared up. Some tried to hoard, while others sought to trade and rebuild connections. Tensions reminded them of the mistakes of the past, of how pride and greed had nearly destroyed their species. Amid this struggle, stories of the past inspired them. Tales of the first humans on the moon, of Mars colonies built with courage and skill, reminded them of what humanity could achieve. They remembered how their ancestors had broken the chains of gravity, reached the stars, and dreamed bigger than any world they knew. Those stories were no longer just history, they were lessons, blueprints for survival and eventual resurgence. In one hidden asteroid colony, a group of young engineers discovered old blueprints for spacecraft engines. Their eyes widened as they realized what had been forgotten. The fusion core engine, a small but powerful device capable of propelling ships faster and farther than anything currently in use. It was a chance, a key to reclaiming space. But building even one required resources, knowledge, and courage. They debated, argued, and doubted themselves. Could they do it? Could humanity rise again? Outside the colonies, danger still lurked. Raiders attacked supply ships, seeking food, fuel, or weapons. Rogue factions fought for control over abandoned stations. The vacuum of space itself punished mistakes with death. One wrong calculation, one damaged hull, and a human could be lost forever. Yet the survivors used these dangers to their advantage. They studied them, planned around them, and learned how to survive against overwhelming odds. Hope began to grow. Slowly, humans started communicating across the system. Old satellites were repaired, sending faint signals to distant colonies. Messages of survival, warnings, and ideas traveled across the void. Humans learned to work together again, sharing knowledge and resources. What had once been a fractured species slowly began to act as one. In the underground colonies, a council of survivors gathered. They spoke of rebuilding trade routes, repairing ships, and reclaiming abandoned factories. They discussed exploring the moon and Mars again, starting with small missions, testing old engines, and learning from every mistake. Each plan carried risk, but each plan carried hope. The young technician on Callisto, now part of a planning team, looked at a holographic map of the solar system. "We may be small," he said, "but we are still human. And humans don't give up." The others nodded. They had seen too much, lost too much, to accept defeat again. Amid the struggle, a new sense of purpose emerged. It was no longer just survival. It was rebuilding. It was reclaiming the stars. The survivors began to understand that ingenuity, courage, and unity could overcome even the darkest times. They remembered the lessons of the past. Greed and pride had destroyed civilizations, But wisdom, cooperation, and determination could create a future. The solar system was still dangerous. The remnants of war floated in orbit. Ghosts of abandoned colonies and broken warships reminded humans of their fragility. Yet even in the darkest corners, life persisted. Humans scavenged, repaired, and dreamed. Small spacecraft, patched with scavenged materials, moved through the void. Underground factories hummed quietly as machinery came back to life. And somewhere in every settlement, someone looked up at the stars and whispered, "One day we will rise again." That whisper, carried across the void, was the seed of hope. Humanity had survived the darkest winter. They had endured centuries of hardship, famine, and isolation. And though the road ahead was long and dangerous, the survivors knew one thing: the fire of humanity had not died. It had only been hidden, waiting for the right time to shine. The struggle of survival would continue for years, perhaps decades. But the first steps had been taken. From underground caves to frozen moons, from ruined stations to scattered colonies, humans were preparing. Preparing not just to live, but to reclaim their place among the stars. And in that preparation, a promise was made. No matter how long it took, no matter the obstacles, humanity would rise again. The scattered human colonies had survived the darkest winters of history, but survival alone was not enough. They needed a way to reclaim the stars, to rise above the ruins of their past. And that way came unexpectedly, in the form of forgotten technology. On the moon, deep within abandoned industrial complexes, engineers uncovered old plans for machines once thought lost. These were not ordinary machines, they were the legacy of humanity's golden age, the tools that had once propelled humans across the solar system. Among the blueprints, one device stood out: the fusion core engine, small, powerful, and capable of accelerating spacecraft faster than any chemical rocket. The engineers studied the designs, their eyes wide with excitement. "If we can rebuild this," one whispered, "we could fly farther than we ever have. We could rebuild everything." They worked day and night, salvaging old materials from ruined factories, melting and reforging metals, repairing circuits. Every step was a challenge. The engines were delicate, complex, and precise. One mistake could destroy months of work, or a life. Meanwhile, on Mars, another group of survivors discovered cold welding technology in the remains of an old orbital factory. With this method, metals could be fused together without fuel or heat, a technique long forgotten. It was the key to building large structures quickly and cheaply. For decades, humanity had struggled to transport materials from planet to planet. Now, with cold welding, entire stations, spacecraft, and colonies could be constructed with efficiency and speed never seen before. Even the smallest discoveries made a difference. Engineers found old manuals on orbital navigation, communication relays, and energy grids. Satellites, once silent, were repaired and sent into orbit. Slowly, human colonies began to reconnect, sending signals across the solar system. Messages of hope, of survival, of ambition, traveled from the moon to Mars, from Titan to Mercury. For the first time in decades, humans felt like a species again. But the rediscovery of technology was not without danger. Raiders and scavengers had learned of these powerful machines. They attacked small colonies, attempting to steal engines, materials, and knowledge. One group on an asteroid had to defend their factory with old, patched-up defense turrets. The attackers were fast, desperate, and ruthless. Yet humans fought back, using strategy, teamwork, and their ingenuity. Each victory, no matter how small, reminded them why they had survived. Humanity never gave up. The suspense of discovery was matched only by the challenges of implementation. Engineers tested their first rebuilt FCE engines on small ships. The launches were tense. Rockets shook, systems sparked, and alarms blared. One wrong calculation could send a vessel spinning into the void. Yet, after weeks of trial and error, one ship successfully lifted off from the moon's surface, its engines glowing with new life. The crew cheered silently in the cockpit, knowing they had taken the first step toward reclaiming humanity's place among the stars. The discovery of technology also brought a sense of wonder. Young humans who had never seen Earth's golden age watched in awe as machinery long forgotten roared to life. They learned about the feats of their ancestors, how they had built colonies, harnessed the sun's energy, and reached planets that had once seemed impossible to touch. These stories inspired the next generation to think bigger, to dream higher, and to take risks that no human had dared in decades. Across the solar system, colonies began to coordinate their efforts. Engineers, scientists, and strategists shared knowledge. Old spacecraft designs were improved. Energy grids were rebuilt. The foundations for a new civilization began to form, built not on greed or rivalry, but on cooperation, ingenuity, and determination. Yet even in these moments of hope, humans never forgot the lessons of the past. They knew that technology alone was not enough. Without wisdom, unity, and courage, power could again destroy them. Engineers debated every step, leaders made careful decisions, and every human understood the stakes. Failure could mean extinction, but success could mean rebirth. The suspense of the era hung like a shadow across the Moon, Mars, and asteroid colonies. Every successful test, every repaired engine, every restored satellite was a small victory, but the larger war against despair, chaos, and time had not yet been won. Humanity had the tools, but they needed the courage to use them. In the quiet hours, when engineers rested and young survivors gazed at the stars, a thought passed through every mind. The solar system was theirs to reclaim, but the universe awaited. The rediscovered technology was not just machines and circuits. It was a key to freedom, a symbol of resilience, and a reminder of what humans could achieve when united. For the first time in centuries, humans dared to imagine a future beyond survival. They dared to dream of exploration, of colonies among the stars, of civilizations that could last for generations. The solar system, once a graveyard of ambition, was beginning to breathe with life again. And in that hope, a new fire was ignited. A fire that promised that humanity would rise, not just to survive but to shine once more. The first steps had been taken. Engines roared, lights flickered across the Moon and Mars, and communication signals crackled with life. Humanity had found its tools, and now, it was time to take its first steps back to greatness. The stars were waiting. And humans, once scattered and broken, were ready to reach for them again. The Moon's dusty surface glowed faintly under the distant sun as humanity's first new spacecraft prepared for launch. After centuries of struggle, after years of scavenging and rebuilding, humans were finally ready to venture beyond their shattered home worlds. The air in the control rooms and hangars was tense. Engineers wiped sweat from their brows, technicians checked every wire, and pilots ran through mental simulations again and again. The spacecraft, small but strong, gleamed with patched panels, repaired engines, and the new fusion core engine humming with life. It was not a grand vessel, not yet, but it was enough. Enough to take the first step, enough to prove that humanity was not done. The young pilot, staring out at the gray horizon, felt a mixture of fear and determination. "This is it," he whispered. "Our first step back into the stars." As the engines roared to life, the Moon trembled beneath them. Sparks flew, alarms buzzed, and for a moment, it seemed as though everything might fail. But then slowly the ship lifted, rising higher and higher. Engineers held their breath, hearts pounding. And then, silence, broken only by the steady hum of the spacecraft climbing into orbit. Humanity had taken its first real step back to space. The success brought hope, but it also brought danger. Space was empty, yes, but not safe. Old debris from the wars, rogue asteroids, and malfunctioning satellites drifted in unpredictable orbits. One wrong move could crush a ship in seconds. Yet humans had learned to adapt. They maneuvered carefully, using clever calculations, ingenuity, and teamwork to avoid disaster. Each small victory over the hazards of space built confidence, showing that humans had not lost their edge. Beyond the Moon, Mars awaited. Its red surface, scarred by past conflicts and centuries of neglect, seemed distant yet familiar. Small craft carried supplies, tools, and engineers, preparing to restart colonies that had been abandoned for decades. The journey was not easy. Engines sputtered, solar winds tested their shields, and communication lines flickered. But every challenge was met with resilience. Humans solved problems on the fly, using their wits, skills, and courage. In the asteroid belt, another human crew tested the first FC-equipped ship in open space. The tiny vessel darted between massive rocks, weaving through debris with astonishing agility. It was small, unassuming, almost childlike in appearance, but it packed the ingenuity of a civilization determined to rise again. Observers from nearby stations watched in awe as the ship demonstrated speed, precision, and clever tactics that no larger vessel could match. As humans ventured further, old colonies began to reconnect. Communication satellites, long silent, were repaired and brought online. Signals crossed vast distances, linking scattered humans across the solar system. Messages carried warnings, advice, and encouragement. The survivors realized that although they were small in number, their minds and determination could outmatch any obstacle. They were humans. They could solve problems, think creatively, and endure more than anyone else. Yet, with hope came suspense. Humans did not know what lay beyond their system. Asteroids drifted silently, Old war machines floated like ghosts, and the vacuum itself was merciless. Each mission carried risk. Any ship could be lost forever, leaving the crew stranded in the void. Still, humans pressed on. They remembered the lessons of the past. Failure is permanent only if courage is abandoned. Back on the moon, engineers celebrated their first successful orbital flights. But they did not rest. Every launch taught them more. Every maneuver improved their designs. They rebuilt not just ships but confidence. Slowly, humanity's presence in space grew. Fleets of small vessels began to explore the asteroid belt, the moons of Jupiter, and the outer planets. Each journey, no matter how small, reminded humanity of their potential. The human spirit, long tested by famine, war, and isolation, shone brighter than any star. Every survivor who looked up at the sky remembered why they had endured. They remembered the ancient rockets that first lifted humans beyond Earth, the courage of the pioneers on the moon, and the innovations that had once made humans masters of the solar system. Now, with technology rebuilt and lessons learned, they were reclaiming that legacy. From the cold shadows of the moon to the scarred surface of Mars, humanity moved outward. Every spacecraft was a symbol of resilience. Every repaired colony a statement of hope. The solar system, once silent and broken, was beginning to hum with activity again. Humans were not only surviving, they were rising. And in the quiet moments as the stars stretched endlessly above them, humans whispered a promise to themselves: we will not stop. We will rise. And we will reach farther than ever before. The first steps to the stars were small, yes, but they were enough. Enough to show that humanity, even after centuries of darkness, still had the courage, intelligence, and determination to shine once more. The universe waited, vast and indifferent. But humanity had taken the first steps. The stars were calling, and humans, clever and undaunted, were finally listening. The rise had begun. Humanity had taken its first steps into space, but taking back the solar system was a far greater challenge. The planets, moons, and asteroid colonies had been abandoned for centuries. Resources were scarce, infrastructure lay in ruins, and hazards lurked in every orbit. Yet humans, determined and clever, were ready to reclaim what was once theirs. The first priority was Mars. Its red deserts had become silent and cold, but beneath the surface, pockets of life still survived. Engineers and pilots carefully landed small ships near old settlements. They repaired solar arrays, restarted water purification systems, and brought essential supplies. Slowly, the first Mars colony began to hum with life again. The settlers repaired old rovers and built small greenhouses, learning to grow food despite the harsh environment. Every success reminded them that humanity could survive even in the most difficult conditions. Meanwhile, back on the moon, humans prepared for deeper missions. Fleets of small ships were built and tested. Each ship carried vital cargo, supplies, and explorers ready to venture to Jupiter's moons, the asteroid belt, and beyond. The fusion core engines allowed them to travel faster and farther than ever before. Even though the ships were small, they moved with speed and precision, showing that ingenuity could triumph over raw power. The asteroid belt became the next challenge. Debris from ancient wars and abandoned stations drifted through the void. Human crews had to navigate carefully to avoid collisions. Scouts mapped safe paths, while engineers repaired old mining equipment to extract precious metals. Every rock and asteroid was a potential resource, and humans learned to turn obstacles into tools. What was once dangerous became useful. Yet, the greatest challenge was not space itself, it was the remnants of human conflict. Rogue factions still existed, groups who had survived by raiding others, scavenging resources, and striking fear into smaller colonies. These groups had power in numbers and desperation in their hearts. When humans first encountered them, clashes were inevitable. But humans relied on their greatest strengths: strategy, cleverness, and adaptability. Ambushes were avoided, traps were set, and small fleets outmaneuvered larger, less disciplined forces. Slowly, order returned to the solar system. Communication networks were rebuilt, connecting the moon, Mars, and asteroid colonies. Signals now crossed vast distances, allowing coordination of supplies, defense, and exploration. Small councils were formed to govern each region, with representatives sharing resources and knowledge. Humans learned that survival was not enough. Unity was key. They had survived the fall of civilization, but now they were learning to thrive. As humans expanded their influence, they discovered old factories and industrial complexes that had been abandoned for centuries. Engineers repaired assembly lines, restarted production, and built new spacecraft using old designs improved with modern ingenuity. Each new ship added to humanity's growing presence in space. Every repaired station was a symbol of resilience. Slowly but surely the solar system was coming back to life. Suspense and danger still followed humanity. Space was unforgiving. Solar storms, damaged satellites, and unpredictable asteroid collisions threatened missions daily. But humans had learned to think ahead. Each mission was carefully planned. Each ship tested, each crew trained. And if a ship was lost, the lesson was not forgotten. It was used to make the next mission safer and more successful. In the quiet moments, survivors looked at the stars and remembered the past. They remembered how greed and envy had destroyed their civilization. They remembered the horrors of war, the battles between Earth and Mars, and the death of countless lives. And they vowed never to repeat the same mistakes. Humanity would rebuild not just its colonies, but its values: cooperation, ingenuity, courage, and respect for life. The solar system, once a graveyard, began to pulse with life again. On the moon, lights glimmered in rebuilt cities and factories. On Mars, greenhouses flourished under protective domes. In the asteroid belt, humans mined resources and repaired stations, preparing for the next phase of expansion. Humans were no longer just surviving, they were reclaiming. They were proving that even after centuries of darkness, humanity could rise and shine. Even in the far reaches of the solar system, whispers of humans' return spread. Small settlements that had long been cut off began to hear messages from the moon and Mars. Help is coming. We are returning. We are rising again. Hope spread like wildfire, and human colonies, once isolated and desperate, began to coordinate their efforts. The first step to reclaim the solar system had been taken. Small ships, careful planning, and human ingenuity were enough to show that the age of humanity was not over. From the moon to Mars, from the asteroid belt to the outer planets, humans were returning to their rightful place. They were rebuilding, exploring, and preparing to face the future, whatever it might hold. And as they looked toward the stars, every survivor knew one thing: humanity had survived the fall. Humanity had endured the darkest winter. And now humanity was rising again. The solar system was theirs to reclaim, and the universe beyond awaited. Humanity had reclaimed much of the solar system, but the universe beyond was still unknown, and danger lurked in the darkness. Scouts sent to the outer planets reported strange signals, anomalies in communication, and mysterious objects moving in space. For the first time in centuries, humans realized that survival and reclaiming the solar system were only the beginning. The outer planets, once thought to be empty, hid remnants of old threats: ancient automated warships, rogue satellites, and drifting weapons from the wars long past. These machines had no loyalty, no reason, only the cold directive to destroy or defend. One patrol ship, scouting beyond Saturn, encountered an automated war drone, its weapons still active despite centuries of neglect. The humans barely escaped, their ship scarred and damaged, but their courage and quick thinking had saved them. Even stranger were the signals. Patterns appeared in the void, unlike any natural phenomenon. Scientists on Mars and the Moon worked tirelessly to decode them, suspecting intelligence, though not yet knowing whose. The unknown was frightening, yet humans were not afraid to face it. Curiosity, combined with survival instinct, drove them forward. They prepared defenses, trained fleets, and improved the new fusion core engines to allow rapid response to any threat. Small skirmishes began to test humanity's readiness. Rogue drones attacked supply convoys near the asteroid belt. Humans responded with strategy and ingenuity. They created decoys, used speed and agility to their advantage, and outsmarted the attackers. One small fleet, led by a daring young commander, lured dozens of drones into a minefield, neutralizing them without losing a single human vessel. It was a small victory, but it showed that humans, even against unknown threats, could prevail through clever tactics and teamwork. In the outer solar system, explorers discovered remnants of ancient alien probes, left behind by a civilization long gone. Some carried technology far beyond human understanding. Others were traps, activated when approached. Engineers studied them carefully, learning what they could and dismantling the rest. Every encounter with the unknown tested human ingenuity, resilience, and courage. Every successful mission brought more confidence. On Jupiter's moons, humans established defensive stations, monitoring the outer planets for further threats. Scouts flew through the asteroid belt, through icy debris, and around abandoned stations, mapping potential hazards. Engineers repaired old orbital satellites, transforming them into observation posts and early warning systems. Humanity's network was growing, not just in size but in intelligence, efficiency, and strategy. Despite the dangers, humans never lost hope. Each challenge reinforced what they already knew: They were clever, resilient, and adaptable. Even small groups of humans could outthink machines and navigate threats that seemed insurmountable. Stories of these victories spread across the colonies, inspiring new generations. Children born in the shadow of ruins learned that courage, ingenuity, and unity could overcome even the most dangerous challenges. Yet suspense always remained. The signals in the outer reaches persisted. Unseen forces moved through the darkness. The universe was vast and humans were still small. Each expedition could be their last. But humanity had learned to prepare for uncertainty. Fleets traveled in coordinated groups, with scouts, defenses, and repair crews ready at a moment's notice. Knowledge and preparation became humanity's greatest weapons. Even in moments of calm, the lessons of the past echoed. Humans remembered how pride and greed had nearly destroyed their civilization. They remembered the wars that had reduced cities to rubble and moons to ghostly silence. Now, as they faced threats from the unknown, they relied on cooperation, intelligence, and patience rather than aggression or haste. They understood that survival depended not just on firepower, but on strategy, unity, and adaptability. Aboard one patrol vessel near Neptune, a young officer stared out at the dark void. Signals flashed across the screens, indicating movement hundreds of millions of kilometers away. She clenched her fists, her heart pounding. "Whatever is out there," she said, "we will face it. We are human. We adapt. We survive. And we rise." The fleets prepared for the unknown, ready to confront any threat. The survivors who had once lived in hiding, scavenging in ruins, were now explorers, warriors, and pioneers. Humanity had not only returned to the solar system, they were ready to defend it, expand it, and step into the stars beyond. And in the silent reaches of space, as ships roared across frozen moons and through asteroid fields, a single truth became clear: humanity's rise was unstoppable. They had faced the fall of civilization, reclaimed the solar system, and now they were ready to meet the universe itself. Whatever lay beyond the stars, humans would face it, not with fear but with cleverness, courage, and unity. The first external threats had been met, but many more awaited. Humanity's journey into the universe had only just begun. And as they looked toward the distant stars, every human knew their destiny was to rise, to conquer the challenges of the void, and to become a species that would never be forgotten. The stars stretched endlessly above, silent and infinite, but humanity was no longer silent. From the moon to Mars, the asteroid belt to the outer planets, human ships roared through space, their engines glowing like fire in the darkness. After centuries of survival, after decades of rebuilding, humans were ready to claim not only the solar system but their place among the stars. The fleets moved with purpose. Small ships, fast and agile, patrolled the solar system, while larger vessels carried supplies, colonies, and new settlers to reclaim abandoned worlds. Every ship was a symbol of ingenuity, resilience, and determination. Humanity had survived famine, war, and darkness, and now their very presence declared to the universe, "We are back and we will rise again." The first external threats had been met, but greater challenges waited. Beyond Neptune, signals indicated massive alien ships, ancient and powerful, drifting in the void. Humanity did not panic. Instead, they prepared. Scientists studied the signals, engineers repaired and upgraded vessels, and strategists planned the first human engagement with unknown forces. Every step was deliberate, calculated, and brave. Humans had learned from centuries of failure, now they acted with wisdom. When the alien ships finally appeared, they were unlike anything humans had imagined. Towering vessels, bristling with unknown weapons, moved with precision and purpose. The fleets of humanity, though smaller in number, did not retreat. Humans relied on their greatest strengths: creativity, teamwork, and daring tactics. Small ships darted between enemy vessels, using speed and agility to outmaneuver them. Engineers in orbit hacked and rerouted old alien systems, turning enemy strength against itself. Every move was a testament to human ingenuity. The battle was fierce, but humanity endured. Ships were damaged and some were lost, yet humans never surrendered. They adapted, learned, and struck back. A small squadron, led by a courageous young commander, disabled the alien flagship using a combination of clever maneuvers and newly rebuilt weapons. The victory was not just strategic, it was symbolic. Humans had faced the unknown, the seemingly impossible, and had prevailed. In the aftermath, colonies and settlements across the solar system celebrated. Communications from Earth, Mars, the Moon, and the asteroid belt carried messages of triumph and unity. Humanity had proven that it could not only survive but also rise stronger, smarter, and braver than before. Every citizen, from the youngest child to the oldest engineer, felt the pride of their species. They had reclaimed their home, defended it from external threats, and proven that humans belonged among the stars. Yet even in victory, humans did not forget the lessons of history. They knew that power without wisdom could destroy civilizations. They established councils, coordinated exploration, and shared resources. Decisions were made with care, ensuring that no single group could wield unchecked authority. Humanity had learned that survival was not enough. Prosperity required cooperation, planning, and foresight. Expansion continued. New colonies were established on previously abandoned moons. Industrial complexes once silent roared with life, producing ships, supplies, and energy for the growing human presence. Communication networks stretched across the solar system, connecting every settlement. Humans no longer looked inward in fear, they looked outward in ambition. Every new mission, every new discovery, was a step toward a future that had once seemed impossible. Amid all this activity, a young historian looked at the stars and thought of the past. Humanity had fallen, nearly destroyed by greed, envy, and war. They had endured centuries of darkness and hardship. But through courage, intelligence, and unity, humans had returned, not as survivors but as masters of their destiny. "We rise because we remember," she whispered. "We rise because we refuse to be weak. We rise because we are human." The solar system, once a graveyard of civilization, now pulsed with life, energy, and hope. Ships streaked through the void, colonies thrived, and humans began to plan beyond their home system. The first steps toward interstellar exploration were underway. New technologies were tested, fleets expanded, and every human knew that the journey had only just begun. And as the sun shone over Earth, casting its golden light across the Moon and Mars, humanity understood its true power. They were not invincible, but they were clever, brave, and relentless. They had endured the fall of civilization, reclaimed the solar system, and faced the unknown. Now they were ready for whatever the universe might hold. From the ashes of the old, a new age had begun. Humanity stood united, intelligent, and fearless, ready to write their destiny among the stars. And as ships roared into the void, engines blazing, every human knew one thing with certainty: the rise of humanity was unstoppable. The stars awaited, and humans, undaunted and resolute, were finally ready to claim them.